So welcome to this yoga and meditation session. I hope that you're feeling well today. Yes, so today's session, it's really suitable for any level of yoga. It's going to be quite gentle. Gentle is quite good, subtle is quite good really. Don't be getting into any weird and wonderful sort of postures where you get stuck in them and then come out with an injury. Ain't worth it. So 25 minutes, we're just going to do some gentle limbering exercises. It's really about sort of getting the body warm, getting into the body, just feeling how the body is. So, and accepting how the body is feeling today. It's not necessarily about, striving to get into a particular posture. People often say to me about yoga, it's one of the biggest barriers. I can't even touch my toes. Well, that's not what it's about, really. It's about getting into the body and enjoying the process. So, for example, when it comes to, lots of people are kind of, they can get down there and it's too much, or they can get there. But, and eventually, with time and a little bit of dedication, continuous practice, we might be able to touch the toes. But really, if you're in this position, you can bend the knees, touch the toes, and then eventually you might be able to straighten the legs. So it's all about really just enjoying the process, being with the process. So today I'm going to show you the kind of my morning routine. When I can, I do this most days, but not every day because I've got other stuff going on in life. But the first thing I do is get the mat out. So the biggest hurdle is actually getting on the mat. And the kind of equipment you're going to need is a mat, maybe a couple of blocks, maybe a blanket. I'm only using a blanket today because I'm doing it on this hard wooden floor. So I want to put it under my knees. So no pain is going to go on. I'm not into physical discomfort in any way. So first thing to do is sit down, if you can, into a really wide-legged posture. We're going to come into a wide-legged child's pose. So as wide as your legs, as your knees will comfortably get. And if you can, with the big toes touching each other. So it's really kind of a wide posture, and it's really good. I mean, I've been doing a lot of running recently, so I'm getting quite tight around in the hips. So this is a really good way to counteract that. And essentially, what we're going to do is we're going to come down gently towards the floor. So, for you, depending on how you're feeling today, you might be okay in the elbows. That might be quite good. That might be a good place to be. You might be up here. And if you can come down a little bit further, just explore this movement. And eventually, the forehead is going to come down onto the floor. Eventually, not necessarily today or this week. But if that's not happening, you could always stack the fists on top of each other. So that's quite nice. And just notice how this feels in the back as well. It's a really nice release in the back, in the sacrum. Maybe the next stage is you could bring the forehead down onto the stacked palms, and then eventually the forehead will come down onto the floor. And if your forehead is comfortably down, then you could reach forward, and this is a really nice thing to do. And actually, if the forehead isn't connecting with the ground, then use a block. That's quite a good idea. And the block could be a telephone directory. If they don't have telephone directories these days, do they? But you know what I mean, a thick book or something. And then extending the arms out and feel that external rotation in the tops of the arms. So feel the tops of the arms externally rotating. And you can feel this really nice space developing right across the shoulder blades. So that's quite a nice thing to do. And then I quite like to just breathe in, lift up slightly, finding that extra length in the spine. The crown of the head moves forward a bit more, and then coming down Just exploring this movement. And then from there, gently ease up. So if your arms have been outstretched, then bring the elbows back in. You can move that block a little bit. And then coming up onto the elbows, moving those knees together into hip width. And then we're going to come into this all fours sort of tabletop position. And then from here, let's just sit back into child's pose, a more traditional child's pose with the knees hip width apart. So sitting back and just noticing how that feels on the lower back again and on the abdomen. So the abdomen may be crushing into the thighs, which is quite nice. Maybe crushing in isn't a very yogic word. Never mind, let's move through that one quickly. And then coming up onto all fours. And then this really simple movement, this cat-cow tilt. So as you exhale, you're going to arch the back. So tucking the tailbone under, tucking the chin in. And as you inhale, lifting up through the sitting bones, up through the chest. And we're not going to throw the head back. We're going to keep the neck nicely in line with the rest of the spine. And again, it's not about getting to these extreme positions. Start gently. As you breathe in, lengthen the front of the body, open up through the chest. As you exhale, lengthen through the back. And it's just about exploring how the body's feeling right now. How is that body feeling? So I quite like this on my lower back in particular. But you'll notice as well, there's lots more flexibility, a lot more movement in the lower part of the spine. So to control that a bit, start to lift the pelvic floor a little bit, the perineum region that's known as the Mula Bandha in yoga, and then engage slightly the lower abdomen. So that's the Uddiyana Bandha. So it's that area of core strength. And then once you start to engage there, maybe there's not as much movement, and you can start to really get into the upper part of the spine, and then come into a flat back position, and then release down into child's pose. And we're going to float through this now. So we're going to come up onto all fours. We're going to tuck the toes under and then press back into downward facing dog. And we're going to float through this. So coming back, knees coming down, and then back into child's pose. So just exploring how this is feeling, coming up. So as you breathe in, tucking the toes under, as you exhale, pressing back into this lovely downward facing dog. Releasing the knees down, and then resting back into child's pose momentarily. So every time you come up, just notice how the body's feeling. Next time you come up, we're going to look towards the knees. So we lengthen the back of the neck. And then we're just going to do one more, but we're going to hold it up. And this is, by holding it up, this is 3 breaths, 5 breaths, whatever is good for you. And we're going to walk out the dog, so you can see that you bend one leg, straighten the other leg, moving from side to side. So walking out the dog, swinging those hips, really nice in the back of the legs, lengthening the hamstrings. By pressing the heels down, we're lengthening the calves. But all the time, if you can, keeping the chest pressing back to the thighs, and that's about enough. And then we're going to come onto the tiptoes, pressing down, and then release, and just rest back into child's pose. Just for a few moments, not for too long here. And then just gently, we're going to come up into a kneeling position. And let's just stretch off the backs of the feet. So tucking the toes under and then sitting back onto the heels. So this might be quite challenging, but it's, if you can just encourage this over time. And then simply going to flatten the feet. So we're going to counterpose that. In other words, so we've stretched off or lengthened the back of the feet, and this time we're going to just go on the other side. It's all the way from the knees all the way up to the toes, and if you wanted to make this a bit stronger, then you could press the fingertips into the ground. Okay, that's good. And then let's tuck the toes under and then come into this ragdoll forward bend. So just being in this ragdoll forward bend, that's quite nice. I'll just move sides here. And just good to shrug the shoulders. And you can see that my knees are really bent. This is nothing to do with the hamstrings right now. It's just about bending the knees and letting the back release. I really love to shrug the shoulders. There's lots of tension that builds up there. Just letting the weight of the head just hang onto the neck. And then, yeah, for people who come to my classes, they'll know that I'm quite into this type of thing. Just a little figure of 8 with the dragging the knuckles on the ground. That's quite nice to do. And then just coming into stillness. And to get up from here, what we're going to do is we're not going to use any of the muscles in the back. And this is a great sort of tip for generally, really, not just on the mat, but off the mat as well. But, we're going to engage the thighs, engage the glutes, the pelvic floor, the lower abdomen, and we're going to use those muscle groups to lift up in a flat back position. And if there's any dizziness, just making sure my microphone isn't twisted there. If there's any dizziness, then keeping the chin tucked in. So quite often if you come up and then there's just a rush of dizziness. Can't think of another word for dizziness. If you can think of one, put it in the comments, kids. And then from here, we're going to just bring in those feet together. So heels and toes connect. And we do have straight legs here. And then breathing in, arms lift. And so you can either have some softness in the hands and the shoulders and the arms. So you can be like this. If you're feeling particularly flexible today, then you could reach up, but do keep the shoulders releasing down. And then for those who are mega flexible there, you could always bring the hands together in this little mudra. So we're going to sort of interlink the fingers, and then the index fingers are and thumbs are connecting like that. So, and then just little swaying palms. So just moving from side to side. So every time you're coming up to the top, that's on the in-breath. And we're finding that really nice length. Feeling grounded down through the soles of the feet. That's quite good. So how does that feel? So that's the most important thing, is how it feels in your body. For me, I'm feeling this really nicely in the waist, in the armpits, lifting up through the chest as well. I'm a big fan of lifting up through the sternum. And then we're going to, speaking of which, we're going to just come into stillness in the center, and then sort of lift up, and then open up through the chest. So it's a little bit of a gentle back bend here. Not too much. Just enough just to feel into the body. Feeling the effect that has on the body and the mind. And then a cheeky little counter pose for that is to do this forward bend. And you can see that I'm halfway down here. I'm halfway down. And then, so when you've got your legs straight in a forward bend, do be supported wherever you are. So having the hands on the shins, the thighs, or the further down or onto the floor. But for this particular position, we're halfway down, and then we're going to just lean forward slightly. So bringing the weight into the front of the ankles, but keeping the backs of the heels down. And then, again, just noticing how that is feeling in the backs of the calves, the hamstrings. Soften the knees, engaging the glutes, the thighs, the pelvic floor, lower abdomen, and just come up into this gentle standing position. And just for a moment or two, just really feeling into the body, feeling that connection with the ground. I'm just feeling that connection with the ground. And every exhalation, feel the awareness descend further down into the body and that connection with the earth. And every inhalation, feel the awareness rise up from the soles of the feet all the way up through the body, passing through the heart space and up into the crown of the head, growing taller as you do. So just feeling that dynamic with the breath, where we've got the descending awareness as you exhale, and then it ascends all the way back up again on the inhalation. So that's quite nice, and you can hold that for as long as you like. And this is one of my favourite postures to do in a lift. So always use the stairs, but if you are going to use a lift, then make the most of it by doing a little short meditation. It's quite good. Encourage your fellow lift passengers to join you. It could change their life, or at least their day. And then to come out of this, we just simply lower the chin to the chest, open the eyes, and lift the gaze. Okay, so kind of nice gentle movements we're getting into the body. And next phase, we're going to just do a little bit of a stronger movement now. And so separating the feet out quite wide. And you can see that my feet are at a 10 to 2 position. So the feet are going in the same direction as the knees. And we're going to essentially just bring the arms up. And I quite like to just twist those arms around a bit. So palms alternately facing upwards and downwards. Feeling that into the shoulders, sort of wringing out the arms. And then ending in with both palms facing down. So shoulders are relaxed, breathing in. And then exhaling that left hand down to that right leg. So it could be the right knee, it could be the right shin, could be the right ankle, foot, or down even to the floor. Softening that knee, pressing all the way up, and then down to the other side. So this is a version of a revolved triangle. So soften the knees as you come up. So just moving from side to side with the breath. So exhaling down, inhaling up. And the main thing is go as slow as you like. We're not trying to get as many reps as possible. We're just coordinating with the breath, just enjoying this movement, feeling into the body, feeling the effect it has on the body. Really nice. I'm just going to do one more to either side because they are very moorish. And you could always, as well, if you in your own practice, you could always, after you've done the dynamic form of this a few times, and hold it down for about 5 breaths or so, 3 breaths, 5 breaths, whatever suits you, and letting the posture develop. But we're just going to keep it moving today. That's good. And then ease off there and just coming back into the center. And so my practice, by the way, it's about really moving all of the joints in the body, trying to get some movement in all of the joints, and that's quite nice. It keeps them mobile, keeps them lubricated, and and you can actually spot when stiffness quite early before it turns into some kind of bigger thing. At least that's what I found anyway. And then so doing a squat if you can, if your knees are okay. This is part of my regular practice. I just like to do a squat, and as you can see, it's a very relaxed squat here. I've got my heels lifted. That's absolutely not a problem, and to do that we've got plenty of time to develop this. And if you wanted to, you could bring the heels onto the back of a block, or seen some people use the backs of their shoes to come back onto. So there's lots of versions of this, and then over time, maybe if you separate the feet a little bit, you could come into a squat. And then this combination now of a squat, whether the heels are down or whether they're lifted, and then coming into this forward bend, it's quite a nice combination. So again, today we're going to just make it dynamic. We're going to come down into a squat, very casual squat. Maybe when you're down, you could lift the chest up, and we could turn it into a bit of a balance maybe. And then back into a forward bend. And I've got my fingertips right down on the floor, but if you're further up, that's absolutely fine. Just make your own adjustments. It's your body, so don't be trying to force anything. And it's all about having a look and see inside, not actually getting into these weird and wonderful sort of Instagram type postures. Nothing wrong with those Instagram type postures. I let them get on with it. I'm only jealous. And then from there, we're going to just bend the knees as before, engage the thighs, the glutes, the pelvic floor, the lower abdomen, and lift up. And finally, before we come into our seated meditation, if you're going to stay around for that, then separating the feet just about the width of the mat apart, or just like wider than the shoulders, and just doing this gentle movement, just side to side, just moving through the spine, just exploring that. And then, as you could move it on, you could lift one heel off the ground as you're facing in the opposite direction. So transferring the weight onto opposite sides. Just let this be loose, but all the time just feeling nice and tall through the crown of the head. Simple movements. Couldn't be easier. Don't know why more people don't do it, really. And then just finally coming into stillness and just closing the eyes, just feeling into the whole of the body, softening through the crown of the head, the whole of the face, the shoulders, the arms, down to the fingertips, the upper back, the lower back, the chest, abdomen, down into the pelvic region, the buttocks, the thighs, knees, calves and shins, ankles and feet. Breathing in, breathing out. And then lowering the chin to the chest. Open the eyes and lifting the gaze.